to the Republic of Middle-Aged Men. As usual, you have your three hosts. You have myself, Tim. Hello. You have Lachlan.
Howdy.
And Ruben.
G'day.
Gentlemen, some say... no. How's your week been? I have a beer again. It's still the Italian beer. I think it's going to be the beer of choice for this book. I'm just really enjoying Italian beer at the moment. Probably because I'm missing Rome every single hour of every single day. Yeah. What are you drinking?
On that theme, I've got a Italian beverage as well.
What is it?
Well, I've got a Malfi Rosso gin, which is rather nice. It's grapefruit flavored. It's rather nice, fresh. Given it's a bit warm in Sydney tonight.
Awesome. Very nice. It is warm. How about you, Rubes? What are you drinking there?
Yeah, Heineken for the big man. As always, it was the special.
Heineken.
It's got to be the special.
There was a lot of German beer for sale, I noticed, on Saturday at my local bottle shop, which was interesting. And they were pretty much out of Italian beer. The only Italian beer they had was Peroni.
Yeah, I saw Dan's had the red label Peronis now too.
Ooh.
They were pretty cheap. It was like $42 a case or something, which it's ludicrous that the imported legitimate Peroni is cheaper than the Australian fake Peroni, which is $50 a case.
I will happily drink the Italian one.
Absolutely.
It is very nice. So, yes, we're back. We're, I don't know, halfway, do you think? How far in do we think we are?
Yeah, about halfway. It's not a big one. It's no Republic.
This is true. I'm really enjoying it though. It does feel similar to the Republic in how much I'm enjoying it and the amount of fun I have reading it is like it's more entertaining than most of what's on TV. So I'm quite happily picking it up and reading it and rereading it as I go and having a giggle. It's good.
I'd agree with you on that for sure.
I know you've got an audio version of it, Rubes. Do you listen to that when you're like mowing the lawns or that sort of thing?
Yeah, pretty much. Or maybe on the way to work, whatever.
Nice. I've been trying to listen to the audiobook of 12 More Rules for Life by Mrs. Jordan Peterson, who we'll talk about later. But yeah, I can't keep listening to it every single drive. It's read by Jordan Peterson, and listening to it on the way to and from work 5 days a week was proving a bit too much last week. So I think I'm listening to it maybe 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 journeys just to sort of chip away at it.
A fair call. I mean, stuff tends to be pretty dense and crosses over a few different ways on the way through. So
yes. I saw this little clip on Facebook, I think it was, of this guy explaining like how men think on a whiteboard, and he showed like idea, destination, straight line, and that's how we converse. So we'll go, I want a beer, I'm going to go buy a beer, I bought a beer, and he goes like, and this is how women do it, and it's like squiggle all over the place to get to the destination, going all over, and the crowd obviously laughs because there's men and women in his audience. And he's like, they say, oh, I'm thirsty, I'd like a wine, but I feel like a wine because, and then this happened, and then this happened, and it sort of takes 50 more steps to get to the same destination. And he goes, this is the difference between how men and women think. And I thought, Peterson talks like a woman in that analogy. He goes all over the place. But the purpose of this is a piece I forgot to mention. So he said like the purpose of the man speaking is I have a problem and here's the solution. The purpose of the woman is I have a problem. I want to talk to you about my problem without a solution. So it occurs to me like I think Peterson talks through it like a feminine way, but then it still arrives at the solution.
Yeah.
Which is why I think both men and women can listen to him and sort of be blown away. Because we're like, you just took 30 tangents and it made sense. How did this happen?
Not everyone will agree with you that it still made sense after 30 tangents, but what did you do?
Well, I thought it made sense.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I thought that was fine. All right, well, let's kick off. We're up to the part that says, someone will say.
Yeah, I think last week we left
along.
off. I think last week he got done dispensing with Miletus's argument that he was an atheist or something to that effect.
Yes. Didn't he say something about how can you believe in the art of training a donkey but not believing in an ass? Or something like that?
Yeah, that's about pulls it down.
I'm surprised he didn't say, it's like believing in sophistry but not believing in an ass. I would have liked to have seen that. Alright, so I'll read this next paragraph and we'll discuss that. So here we go.
Sounds good.
Someone will say, and are you not ashamed, Socrates, of a course of life which is likely to bring you to an untimely end? To him I may fairly answer, there you are mistaken. A man who is good for anything ought not to calculate the chance of living or dying. He ought only to consider whether in doing anything he is doing right or wrong, acting the part of a good man or of a bad. Whereas, upon your view, the heroes who fell at Troy were not good for much, and the son of Thetis above all, who altogether despised danger in comparison with disgrace, and when he was so eager to slay Hector, his goddess mother said to him that if he avenged his companion Patroclus and slew Hector, he would die himself. Fate, she said, in these or the like words, waits for you next after Hector. He, receiving this warning, utterly despised danger and death, and instead of fearing them, feared rather to live in dishonour, and not to avenge his friend. Let me die forthwith, he replies, and be avenged of my enemy, rather than abide here by the beaked ships, a laughing stock and a burden of the earth. Had Achilles any thought of death and danger? For wherever a man's place is, whether the place which he has chosen or that in which he has been placed by a commander, there he ought to remain in the hour of danger. He should not think of death or of anything but of disgrace. And this, O men of Athens, is a true saying. Now, before we discuss this, it just reminded me, I think in the last couple of weeks, didn't they find Troy?
I don't know. I haven't heard.
Pretty sure they found it.
Oh.
Let me just
I hadn't found it before.
Let me quickly Google that.
Actually, now that you mention it, I think I did hear them mention that in the podcast with Joe Rogan.
Most historians now agree that ancient Troy was to be found at Hisarlik. Troy was real.
Did something change? Why are they sure that this is the spot now?
Surprise discovery reveals ancient city of Troy, and that it's 5,500 years old. It's located in Turkey's northwestern Kanakyl province. It is located on a mound or tell, historic overlooking the Aegean.
The GNC, yeah.
Aegean, there you go, sorry. Stupid English. Yeah, you're right, it was on Joe Rogan, they were talking about it. That's where I saw it.
Yeah. That is a hell of a long time ago. 5,500 years. What the hell?
Yeah, and there's a lot of people who for a long time have said it wasn't a real place. It's like mythology. Whoops. And Socrates is certainly talking about these guys like they're all legit people. So
Yeah.
anyway, there you go. Another example of things that we're starting to uncover. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, back to the passage. Thoughts?
Well, I mean, I think this is Socrates just returning to form and sticking to his Republic roots. You know, he's playing the role of the just man and trying to do what is right, and the consequences of that are the consequences of that. Um, I suppose some of it may well be putting on a bit of a brave face, but I don't think. I think he's quite prepared to die in this quest from what we've read so far. So I don't think it's false, posturing or anything.
Yeah, I think that's right. It doesn't seem like posturing. It's also interesting. He doesn't seem to care about death as much, like anywhere near as much as actually just doing what is right or wrong.
Yeah, that's kind of his whole point, isn't it?
Yeah.
What did you guys think of that line? A man who is good for anything ought not calculate the chance of living or dying. He ought only to consider whether in doing anything, if he is doing right or wrong, acting the part of a good man or a bad man.
Because I think as soon as you start calculating it, then you're choosing a pathway that can lead away from doing what's right. So I think that's what he's saying. If you're really good, you don't even need to calculate the chances because you're going to do the right thing anyway, right?
Yeah, and I guess what his whole thing is, if it's the right thing to do, it's worth dying for.
Yeah, but I don't know if it's further ahead or if it's something we already read where he's talking about death and
Yeah, that's still to
whether
come, yeah.
Yeah,
go,
it is a little bit later.
Foreshadowing. We won't say anything further yet.
Yeah.
What do you guys think of him referring to the old Achilles slaying of Hector? That's an interesting little bit.
I like that.
So like
Masculine.
like a simple version of that. Basically, someone comes to Achilles and says, if you avenge your brother and kill Hector, it will lead to your death. And Socrates is saying, well, Achilles decided that he would rather die than live in dishonor and not avenge his friend.
Yep.
I mean, say what you will about the tenets of vengeance. The point is he's trying to live by a higher standard.
Yep. Yeah,
it's pretty strong. Like, you make a pretty strong statement. A man is good for anything. A man who is good for anything, like basically, which is another way of saying if you're not at least trying to do the right thing, then you're good for nothing. Just go away. I don't want anything to do with you. It's pretty rough.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he's made it pretty clear, like, where his virtues lie, and that he's a man who sticks to his virtues no matter who it pisses off. And I guess that's just kind of sticking to his story. I don't know. I guess maybe he's drawing a little bit on the story of heroes and all that sort of thing. Probably doesn't hurt his case a little, trying to draw a comparison, because not many people would kind of compare
an overweight dude in rocks to Achilles.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's his whole thing, isn't it? He's always talking about principles need to be essentially universalized. So, those principles could show up in many different forms.
Well, that and the fact that the philosopher king was supposed to be a warrior as well as a scholar, right? So
yeah.
Well, in the next paragraph we'll find out that old Socrates did do a bit of warrioring at some point.
Well, and maybe you touched on something by accident there, Ruben. Maybe Achilles also wore Crocs, which is why he got shot in the Achilles.
I think you've solved it, mate. You figured it out.
Crocs are the
If he was
downfall
wearing,
of warriors.
if he was wearing
They're
proper
definitely
sandals,
they're definitely the downfall of manhood.
Yeah, Crocs undermine masculinity.
he had a frowny face emoji stuck on them at the time. I think that's what might have.
I still think we should make some Crocs called Crocrates.
Crocrates.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
they would sell.
For whatever a man's place is, whether the place which he has chosen or that in which he has been placed by a commander, there he ought to remain in the hour of danger. So
Yeah,
I like that too. It makes a difference between whether you're there by choice or whether you're put there. The point is you're there and you need to do your duty.
Absolutely.
yeah, I think that's a really good point.
Hmm.
Well,
What
I'm sorry. Yeah,
what do you? I don't know. Do you think that kind of sentiment is countercultural to today's sort of society?
Probably so, because we're in a society now where I'm not saying it's wrong or right, but every life is sacred, and it's kind of the age of the individual rather than the age of society or a group of something. If you know what I mean.
I think
Well, I didn't
it's.
think of it that way, but you might be right because if you're going to do your duty, who are you doing your duty to? I mean, I suppose you could be doing it to the gods, but to some extent, you don't have a duty if there's nobody else around.
Look, I think there's still certainly patriots in many countries, right, who would do their duty for their country.
Yeah,
Uh, and look, amongst individuals, and there's going to be pockets who will still do their duty for whomever they're aligned to, right?
Yeah.
But I
Well,
think there's a lot more sort of general cultural feeling now of, I don't know, looking out for yourself as number one. Everything else can suck at number two.
well,
I'd say that's there in general community, but I think the Army, Navy, Air Force, all those different organisations would still have this sort of attitude.
I'd agree.
You've got a role to play, and you're there to do a job.
yeah.
It probably depends what country you're in too, because like here in Australia, we don't have like a massively um, like our society is not geared towards military service. Whereas I think if you go like to the US or something, I think military service and the size of the military is such that it does drive a lot more people to want to serve maybe for their country. I don't think that's something that necessarily, I don't know, maybe Australia just sort of keeps out of that stuff enough that it's not been something where we have to have this massive military or something, so we
Yeah,
don't have that sort of societal need to sort of drive that. But
I think part of it is historically we got shafted a bit by the
true.
Empire as well. I mean, you think about
Yeah.
World War One, we were basically just used as cannon
Canada,
fodder,
Florida.
and then
Hmm.
World War Two, similar thing. Um,
Yeah.
the monarch wasn't too kind. Like, we were better in World War Two than we were in World War One in how we were treated, but I think with how the monarchy's sort of weakened, and particularly now that the Queen's gone,
Yeah.
I think if England goes to war, a heck of a lot of Australians will say, "I don't care. We're not going to go fight with them." Not all of them would, but I think there'd be a lot more than 50 years ago.
Yeah, 100%.
Mm. Well, let's continue. We'll read the next paragraph. Strange indeed would be my conduct, O men of Athens, if I who, when I was ordered by the generals whom you chose to command me at Perdidia and Amphilochus and Delium, remained where they placed me, like any other man facing death, if now, when, as I conceive and imagine, God orders me to fulfill the philosopher's mission of searching into myself and other men, I were to desert my post through fear of death or any other fear, that would indeed be strange, and I might justly be arraigned in court for denying the existence of the gods if I obeyed the oracle because I was afraid of death, fancying that I was wise when I was not wise. For the fear of death is indeed the pretence of wisdom, and not real wisdom, being a pretence of knowing the unknown. And no one knows whether death, which men in their fear apprehend to be the greatest evil, may not be the greatest good. Is not this ignorance of a disgraceful sort, the ignorance which is the conceit that a man knows what he does not know? And in this respect only I believe myself to differ from men in general, and may perhaps claim to be wiser than they are. That whereas I know but little of the world below, I do not suppose that I know, but I do know that injustice and disobedience to a better, whether God or man, is evil and dishonourable, and I will never fear or avoid a possible good rather than a certain evil. And therefore, if you let me go now, and are not convinced by Anytus, who said that since I have been prosecuted, I must be put to death, or if not, that I ought never to have been prosecuted at all, and that if I escape now, your sons will all be utterly ruined by listening to my words. If you say to me, Socrates, this time we will not mind Anytus, and you shall be let off, but upon the condition that you are not to inquire and speculate in this way any more, and that if you are caught doing so again, you shall die. If this was the condition on which you let me go, I should reply, Men of Athens, I honour and love you, but I shall obey God rather than you. And while I have life and strength, I shall never cease from the practice and teaching of philosophy, exhorting anyone whom I meet, and saying to him after my manner, You, my friend, a citizen of the great and mighty and wise city of Athens, are you not ashamed of heaping up the greatest amount of money and honour and reputation, and caring so little about wisdom and truth and the greatest improvement of the soul, which you never regard or heed at all? And if the person with whom I am arguing says yes, but I do care, then I do not leave him or let him go at once, but I proceed to interrogate and examine and cross-examine him, and if I think that he has no virtue in him, but only says that he has, I reproach him with undervaluing the greater and overvaluing the less. And I shall repeat the same words to everyone whom I meet, young and old, citizen and alien, but especially to the citizens, inasmuch as they are my brethren. For know that this is the command of God, and I believe no greater good has ever happened in this state than my service to the God. For I do nothing but go about persuading you all, old and young alike, not to take thought for your persons or your properties, but first and chiefly to care about the greatest improvement of the soul. I tell you that virtue is not given by money, but that from virtue comes money and every other good of man, public as well as private. This is my teaching, and if this is the doctrine which corrupts the youth, I am a mischievous person. But if anyone says that this is not my teaching, he is speaking an untruth. Wherefore, O men of Athens, I say to you, do as Anytus bids, or not as Anytus bids, and either acquit me or not. But whichever you do, understand that I shall never alter my ways, not even if I have to die many times. Boom.
I love that whole section.
Yeah, totally.
In summary, he's basically saying, this is what I'm doing, and if you let me go, I'm going to keep doing it. So factor that into your decision.
That was also a really long paragraph. I forgot it was that long. I turned the page, I'm like, oh my gosh.
Good.
I also love the bit about the arrogance of man to have, I suppose, thoughts about what the afterlife might be when they know nothing, and what have you to fear? Because
You
how do
don't
you
know.
presume to know it's a bad thing or a good thing? Like, You don't know what's beyond death. So I guess he's trying to call out, this is the reason for the way that he is that he doesn't make presumptions of that kind. He doesn't assume to know more than everybody else, and that's what he points out. That's what makes me different. I don't have that arrogance. Although, I mean, everyone perceives it as arrogance, but it's not what it is. It's actually it's humility, but yeah, it's funny how it gets viewed the other way around.
Yeah. I will never fear or avoid a possible good rather than a certain evil. Do you reckon that's a good way to live?
Say it again for me.
I will never fear or avoid a possible good rather than a certain evil. So he's saying, for all we know, death could be a possible good.
Yeah.
But there are things that I know are certainly evil. So if you're talking about a balancing act, why would you not just do the right thing, regardless of whether it leads to death? I mean, he's talking about an extreme circumstance where death is on the line. I don't know whether you could boil that principle down to, something a little bit more mundane, but is it a good principle? I don't know.
It's not bad as long as you're not throwing your life away. It's as long as it's principled. You know what I mean? Like,
you want to be right about that principle.
Yeah, because I mean,
do you mean like you have to? Are you saying there's a time and a place for live to fight another day? Is that kind of what you're getting to?
Well, maybe, but I mean, look, live by your principles, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's. I'm trying to think how to word this. That's hard to get your noodle around.
Yeah.
Remember that show? Is it the Wheel of Time? Yeah. So spoiler alert for those who haven't watched it, but the sorceress chicks apparently can't lie.
Yeah, that's right.
So it becomes like a weakness that if they get captured and interrogated, as long as the correct questions asked, they can't avoid giving the correct answer. So it kind of makes them weak. Is that kind of a good example of what you're trying to talk about, where like of not throwing it away? Like there could be a moment where telling the truth or trying to do a good thing will get you killed, but for the bigger picture it'd be much smarter if you kept yourself alive for that moment because you can have a greater impact later. Is that kind of what you mean?
I just would be concerned about death being viewed as a possible good. It's possibly good, possibly bad. You don't know, right? And it's fine if you're going to put it on the line for something you believe in or that's something that has real purpose. But I guess you wouldn't want to put more balance in there that could be a good thing, like I'm just going to go throw myself on this guy's sword. You know what I mean? Like,
throw myself on his sword. Starfish.
Like he's referring to a certain evil. So in whatever scenario he's talking about, he's saying that is what you're balancing up against is something that's certainly evil.
Yeah, and in that circumstance, I think you're absolutely. He makes a solid point for sure.
What do you call it? It reminds me a little bit of when he's talking about the nature of death, and we don't know whether it's good or bad. There's I heard this proverb. I don't know. I think it's like an Asian one or something, where it's a story where there's these two farmers and they're like tilling the field, and they've got one ox, and they grow radishes, and they're barely getting by, and then I think the ox like dies or something, and then I'm probably telling this wrong, by the way. And then the son says to the father, "Oh, we're going to starve to death out here." And the dad's like, "Well, we don't know what it is yet. We don't know whether this is good or bad. Just wait." And then, apparently something happens. Like the fields are dying, but then a horse comes over the hill, and he catches the horse, and he's like, "Oh, we're saved. We've got this horse." And his dad's like, "Well, we don't know whether it's good or bad or yet. So the son's trying to get the horse to pull the plough, and the horse takes off and runs up the hill, takes off again. And he goes back to his dad and he goes, oh, we're going to starve to death out here again. And his old man's again is like, well, we don't know what it is yet. We don't know whether it's good or bad. And then like the next day, the horse comes back with a whole herd of horses behind him. And they manage to capture him in the field. And the son's like, we're saved. We're going to be rich. We're going to sell horses. And his dad, once again, is like, well, son, we don't know what it is yet. Anyway, so this kid doesn't know anything about taming horses. So he's trying to break these horses and he falls off and shatters his leg in 10 places or something. And he goes, and his dad drags him into the house. And he's like, oh, Dad, we're going to starve to death out here. This is horrible. And his dad once again goes, well, we don't know what it is yet. Just wait. And then the story goes that the shogun comes over the hill with a whole army and comes to the dad and says, we're going off to fight, I don't know, the Chinese or something. Give us your son. He has to go to battle. And he's like, oh, he can't walk. He's a cripple now. And so then they go, oh, whatever. And they ride off. And then they all get annihilated. But the idea being, well, we don't know what it is yet. And I feel like that's kind of like what Socrates is saying. Well, he's like, well, I don't know what death is. I don't know whether it's good or bad. But just wait and see. I don't know what it is yet. But there's no point getting stressed out about it.
Well, I think that's sort of like one of the Epictetus, Stoic philosophies as well from memory. Is like something along the lines of like, it's like sort of like deal with the situation, like not the fear of the potential situation. Like,
yeah,
yeah, just be in the moment.
It's good advice. I mean, how many people have anxiety about what might happen that never comes to be, but they spend a lot of time stressing about stuff, Everybody does it at some point. Some people do it a lot more than others. How much energy it takes from you and all that sort of thing, So it's good advice. You don't know. Wait and see.
Yeah.
Hard to do, but good advice.
Easy said, hard to do.
Yeah.
What do you think about the part where he says, from virtue comes all good things?
Ooh. Oh, yeah, about the cash money. I tell you that virtue is not given by money, but that from virtue comes money and every other good of man, public as well as private.
Well, this is the story of the better man, isn't it? Right, the good man. And
yeah, I suppose in the Republic, they're sort of balancing that against justice, or that kind of almost becomes a definition of justice. What does it profit a man if he gains the whole world but loses his soul?
Yeah.
Well, also in the fact that more or less, I think he was pointing out that, searching for money and riches was kind of one of the roots of evil, and that's why he was making the warriors of the Republic, to not be able to touch gold or whatever it was, to keep them away from money.
Oh yeah,
keep them pure, pure of heart, and money is like a taint. So, look, he'd always put forward that it was better to be good, and that good things would come from being good, and that was like the opposite of what Thrasymachus was proposing and saying, it was better to be bad and rape, pillage, and steal in order to get ahead everywhere you can, because that's what everyone else does.
Yeah.
So I think this is just, part of Socrates' philosophy he's speaking to here, absolutely clearly,
Yeah, and he's saying that every other good of man comes from virtue, not from riches. I think there's a lot of truth in that when you consider that somebody who has a lot of money is not necessarily going to be happy or better off or be a better person. I think everyone knows that's true. It's like there's a bloke that I used to work with. we used to talk about that. We used to talk about mowing the lawn, and he's like, I derive a lot of joy just being out there mowing my lawn, getting the edging right and having it nice. And he's like, I know it's a dumb, simple thing. He's like, but he derives joy from that. And it's like, if you can't figure out how to enjoy those little things, then how are you going to enjoy the big things? I think there's some truth in that. That's what he used to say. If you can't figure out how to enjoy the small things in life, you're not going to enjoy the big.
That's similar to that quote about traveling. That with people who keep moving from place to place, it's like it doesn't matter where you live, you take yourself with you.
Yeah, you can't run away from your problems, kind of thing. You mean?
Well, you can't run away from yourself.
Yeah.
I think going back to the money thing, I think that quote that he had in there kind of cements what he was all about there. He's saying, "For I do nothing but go about, and chiefly to care about the greatest improvement of the soul. I tell you that virtue is not given by money, but that the virtue comes from money and every other good." So it's all about the soul. It's all about being the good man, and that's where the wealth of your life will come from, whether it's financial wealth, but spiritual wealth maybe. And I suppose that was the life of, God, I'm trying to remember the names. Was it Thrasymachus' father? I can't remember if it was Thrasymachus' father that we have at the start of the Republic. The old man who's, lived a good life, and he says, I made a little money, not much more than my father, but I didn't really lose any. But I didn't stab anyone in the back on the way through, so I sleep easy at night, not worrying about facing the scales at the end of my life to see whether I lived a good life or a bad life. So I sleep well, and I, feel comfort in my soul. Going to sleep. What's that worth to you? I reckon that's pretty damn good.
Yeah, can't put a price on that.
Sleeping well is worth much. Well, that's actually where I was planning to end last podcast. We'll keep going, but I thought this was like
there is a slight shift in focus after that paragraph.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to wrap up now, you could. But I'm happy to keep going. Whatever you want to do.
I think we do one more, and then or two more, depending on how long the next one takes. But yeah, we'll keep going. All right, I'll read the next one. Men of Athens, do not interrupt, but hear me. There was an understanding between us that you should hear me to the end. I have something more to say, at which you may be inclined to cry out, but I believe that to hear me will be good for you, and therefore I beg that you will not cry out. I would have you know that if you kill me, such an one as I am, you will injure yourselves more than you will injure me. Nothing will injure me, not Miletus, nor yet Anytus. They cannot, for a bad man is not permitted to injure a better than himself. I do not deny that Anytus may perhaps kill him or drive him into exile, or deprive him of civil rights, and he may imagine, and others may imagine, that he is inflicting a great injury upon him. But there I do not agree, for the evil of doing as he is doing, the evil of unjustly taking away the life of another, is greater far. Greater far.
I kind of like this. He's throwing a bit of sizzle and going all. He's going all Obi-Wan Kenobi on this bit. If you strike me down, I will become more powerful than you could possibly imagine.
I just had visions of Snoop being Socrates for some reason. Like I'm so Grizzle, I'm going to throw down some snizzle.
Snizzle for Grizzle, yeah.
So
I like how he starts out by saying, do not interrupt. So it's clear that whatever he said on the last bit, people were starting to crack the shits and try to talk over him.
Yeah, do not interdizzle.
But he's kind of saying, but he goes, what? He goes, if that's upsetting you, wait till you hear this.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, it's I don't know. Do you call it a threat? what he's kind of put out there, or do you think it's a statement of what he perceives to be fact?
I think he's saying, "Hey guys, I've got a gift for you. Just hear me out. You're gonna love this because I'm doing this for your good."
What do you think? So he's admitting he's like, look, these guys might kill me, but what they're doing is wrong. So he's almost saying you're only harming yourself.
Yeah, yeah. It's as Lachlan said, it's the Obi-Wan Kenobi moment.
Yeah,
100%.
Man. What do you think about though? For a bad man is not permitted to injure a better man than himself. Like I'm guessing there, he's talking about like he's going real abstract again, like about the purity of your soul type thing. He's like if somebody harms you, they're acting unjustly, which means they're harming their own soul. And then it kind of blends into that whole Stoic philosophy where, but if your soul is pure, then they're not actually hurting you. Which, that kind of reminds us all of that Epictetus stuff where he's kind of like,
Yeah.
if you lose it, just give it back and all that sort of gear.
It does
About,
feel.
it's just an impression. Like they're basically saying they're sullying themselves by acting in this way, but I've done nothing wrong.
Yeah, it does feel like the seeds of Stoicism here. Like of just, you can throw all these things at me, but all you're doing is putting mud on your own hands.
And
Yeah,
he
no,
throws
I
it
think.
into. Yeah, sorry, you go, mate.
Well, I think it was also that bit you're saying about like Epictetus there. It was like like the life is borrowed, and that you're just sort of giving it back. So it's kind of like you're not injuring me. It was never mine to begin with. So um, at the same time, you're doing an act of evil. So you're definitely sliding yourself more than you're sliding me.
Yeah, and then he throws in, and he may imagine, and others may imagine, that he's inflicting a great injury upon him. But there I do not agree. So he's saying, like, you're doing this stuff to me, and you're probably doing it because you think you're going to hurt me, but you're not going to hurt me. You're only going to hurt yourself. It's kind of what he's saying, eh?
Oh yeah.
Well, I think he's taking the whole power out of the situation as well, because like he's on trial, and this is being sort of like lauded before the court that or his life's hanging in the balance, and we can take it from him, and that sort of thing. And he's like, you can take it, but that's evil that you're conducting. Do you want evil in your soul? I'm okay. I'm cool with it, right? If that's what you want to do, but you're not taking any power away from me. All you're doing is bringing more evil into your soul.
But do you think he's commenting on I think you're right, but do you think he's commenting on their motive too? When he makes reference to, like, you think you're going to hurt me. You may imagine that doing this to me is going to harm me because you hate me, but...
Could be. I mean, look, it's obvious, like, from the crowd calling out and all that sort of thing, that there are people who are upset or feel like they have been slighted by him. And
Yeah.
he's made it clear why that would likely be, and he understands that. But at the same time, he's not apologizing for it. He's like, look, I'm trying to come from a good place here. I understand it might be uncomfortable for you to face the truth that you're I don't know, selfish asshole or something, and I'm just pointing that out to you. But
Yeah.
truth hurts. I don't know. But I mean, he sort of said it in the previous paragraph too. I'm going to do what God has commanded me to, not what you guys want me to do. So I'm doing what God's asked me to do. So you tell me how I could be doing the wrong thing.
Yeah. He's like, there's your options, guys.
Yeah.
Any thoughts, Timmy?
Not any additional. I agree with what you guys have said about it. Yeah, I'm just picturing Obi-Wan Kenobi wearing Crocs.
Yeah.
Do they actually show his shoes in Star Wars?
No, there could well be Crocs
Wouldn't they, man, under that robe?
under the robe. Yeah.
We might be onto something. That might be why Kenobi couldn't move fast when he was older.
It's like a Scotsman's kilt or something, is it right? Like you just don't know what's going on under there. No jocks, just Crocs. That's the Jedi way.
No jocks, just Crocs.
Well, I
Yeah,
think
do,
that'll do. I think we'll head over to the pub for lots of us. What do you guys think?
Don't worry.
All right, let's head over to the pub. Okay. I actually don't mind that little piece of music that we put over the top. I know you guys can't hear it. It's because it's not actually playing. I'm just hearing it in my mind's eye. But there's something I want to do. I need to hold down. Now I'm learning how to use my Mac here. Oh, there we go. That worked. And I'll just quickly do this. So what I'm trying to do, guys, is here it is. Oh, look at this, on the fly production. Learning like a noob. Crop. And then file, save.
You say on the fly, but from our end, we can't see anything happening.
Oh, okay. I think that worked. Okay, let's find out if that worked. Oh wow, what's that? Okay. I'm trying to drop this in here. There we go. Can you guys see that?
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
I'll stick it over my mug for a minute.
Uh-huh.
All right. So we actually had the privilege of going to go see Jordan Peterson in the city the other day. I really enjoyed it. The only thing I didn't like were the seats. The seats sucked.
Yeah, terrible.
My body is not recovered from those seats even after a week. Back was not happy. But other than that, really enjoyed it. So what I've put on the screen here for those listening is a copy of the 12 rules from the most recent book that Jordan Peterson's done. And he discussed 2 rules on the night from that book. So one of them was Rule 1, which is do not carelessly denigrate social institutions or creative achievement. And the second one was 10. Plan and work diligently to maintain the romance in your relationship.
Oh, yeah. I was like, what was the second one? I remember the first one.
So he had his wife come out at the start and they talked about how they've maintained having date nights every week and trying to keep their marriage strong. And then obviously they had a few years of bad health between the two of them. They've come out the other side of that. We've all been married quite a long time. I passed 20 years this year. How long have you been married for, Lachlan
16 years.
and Rubes?
12?
Yeah, so we're all past that 10-year stage. I found it pretty good. My wife and I, on Friday nights, our kids go to a group hosted by our church for 2.5 hours. So this year we've been trying out all the local restaurants on Friday nights. So we drop the kids off and then come home, get dressed in nice clothes, and we go and have some good food somewhere. And
Nice.
that's been really cool. It's been really good sort of reconnecting like that, particularly after going on the big holiday together. And I look forward to it every week. So that I agree with the date night idea. I think it's a good idea. How about you, Lachlan? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, my wife and I sort of do something similar. So it's pretty much like when the kids go to bed on Friday night. We'll always we're not going out because we've got 3 kids and can't leave them anywhere. But I'll go get some takeout, and we sort of have our own date night once the kids have gone to bed. So we'll have dinner together and just sort of chat and all that sort of stuff once they've sort of gone to bed. But yeah, once a week we do that. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Rubes, do you do anything sort of to that degree?
I don't know. I don't know whether I'm in a slightly different situation from you guys. Our youngest is now 2, so we were sort of at that point, but then we had another one, so it's sort of back in the has anyone got any time to do anything anymore zone.
So the date night worked too well, and now you've got another one. Yeah.
By the time they hit about 4, you'd be able to get back into the day night groove, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't like calling it a date. I know, I get it.
We don't really either, but it's just kind of
You got to call it something, so whatever. Call it a date night. That's okay.
yeah. But,
I think
going out with those are novelties in. We don't do that very much.
I think calling it a date night it gives it a goal, almost like a clear objective of it's different. It's not just dinner without the kids. It's actually we're going to go and do something fun that we used to do before kids. So yeah, I think it just gives it maybe some sort of different set of rules, maybe, or different significance. Not quite sure exactly what the magic is, but it certainly feels different from just, oh, the kids aren't home, let's have some, toasted avocado and cheese sandwiches or something. It's actually, let's treat ourselves a little bit.
Yeah, you're trying to put yourself in the headspace that you're going to make them important, and yourself, and have a, put yourself in the moment to have a good time, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think it's good. So the general Jordan Peterson experience, which we talked about at the start of the show, of we're going to go from A to B via C to Z. There was a point probably half an hour in where he switched from Rule 1 to Rule 10, and he hadn't finished addressing Rule 1 properly. And it occurred to me, like, oh, hang on, you haven't actually completed all of your argument for Rule 1. And then I remembered who I was listening to, and I just went, well, I'm sure we'll come back to it at some point, so I'm just going to let go of that and enjoy the ride. And then he did. Halfway through Rule 10, he closed Rule 1, and I was like, wow, legend. What did you guys think? Is it a similar sort of experience, or?
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't read his book. I've got that book, and I haven't read it yet because I know we'd sort of talked about we might do that one day, but it was kind of like we'll do some of the classic philosophy sort of stuff first. But I do listen to quite a lot of his podcasts and all that sort of stuff, though. So I'm familiar with his style and the way he sort of goes about things. So not terribly surprised. But I have to say I quite enjoyed the maybe the question time stuff more so than the sort of discussion from the book, because I think it's sort of where his creativity of like thinking, and you can sort of see that thinking process, and I find that quite interesting, the way he approaches things. Whereas you'd think it was quite funny though, like, because I mean this is a book he's written and he talks about all the time, and it's quite funny how we sort of had such big tangents on that topic. But I know he doesn't rehearse, and he has a different conversation every time. So that's part of the thing, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I haven't seen him before. You have, so is that similar to the
I
experience you'd had before?
yeah, I feel like he has, when he's like a gaming analogy, I feel like he has a really mad deck of cards. Like he's got this big deck of cards, and when he's in conversation, and there's like a topic here, he's got, oh, I've got 4 cards for that, and he'll go boom, 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 and sort of explore those 4 cards and use them in a different way, and then
Hmm.
now it's shifted to this direction, and now, oh yeah, I know these things, so let's throw those in there, and so it's kind of like being a chef or something. Like he knows what ingredients to throw at that topic and how to sort of
Hmm.
unpack it. So having listened to him as much as I have, there's things in there that are familiar, and even just little throwaway lines that he has said reminds me of, I remember him using that line for like 20 minutes worth of talking somewhere else, and so then those things sort of come to mind. So
Sure.
yeah, what were your thoughts, Ruben? Did you think he was a sophist, or what was your thoughts?
I found him really rambly. I didn't really feel like he was presenting an argument per se, but just sort of just discussing some of the ideas that he put in the book. Um, I I liked about halfway he was starting to lose me a bit, and then he started to talk about ideology. And I'm like, oh, that's what I want to hear about. That's what I'm interested in. But then I think then he realized, oh, hang on, I can't actually start talking about this because
I need
that's a
another
whole
couple
other
of hours.
topic. And then so then he kind of just cut it short and he just goes, well, well, what I'm saying is not ideology, and then just moved on. And I'm like, well, that's not an argument, dude. That's just.
Yeah.
I think he might have just been trying to save time. Um, but no, it was interesting, I guess. Um, but like I said, I didn't feel like he was presenting an argument as much as he was just sort of generally speaking about the idea of institutions and that people might derive meaning from it. I couldn't help but think uh, if he went back and listened to that and then sat down and summarized it, he could probably say everything he said in about 15 minutes.
Oh, 100%. That's
But
true
having said that,
half the time. Mm.
maybe that's the entertainment value. Maybe people like that, and maybe it was the chairs because my legs are going to sleep, and I was just like, I got to get up. This is doing my
Yeah.
head in.
Man,
Yeah, the
I'm
chairs were
nowhere near as
terrible.
tall as you guys, but I still found the chairs uncomfortable. So,
I think it is the, like, I enjoy the way he shoots from the hip with it. Like,
hmm.
Yeah,
it's an hour of him unpacking his thoughts and ideas with essentially no notes. The only notes he had were the rules printed in front of him,
Hmm.
and that's certainly difficult to do. But I
Totally.
think I'm with you, Lachlan. I think I enjoyed the question time more because um, I think it's easier to craft a performance than it is to craft an answer to a question you don't know is coming.
Hmm.
So I think you see genuine Jordan Peterson when he tries to answer questions like that. Of it, this is actually how he thinks, and then you see the flavors very similar, and the way that he unpacks the question is very similar to how he explores the ideas he wants to discuss, and then that sort of gives credence to that he's being genuine when he's exploring those ideas.
how much do you think it was performance, and how much do you think it was lecture? I suppose you could say a lecture is a performance, but not really. Well, how much of it? I'll put it this way: how much of it do you think was rhetorical, and how much do you think of it was dialectic, like as in information?
Ooh, they're two different questions. I'll start with the
No, that's
first
one
one.
question.
No, they're two different questions because the first one, like a good sermon to me at church, for example, is um, I don't like a sermon where the preacher doesn't look people in the eye. Well, I don't like a sermon where I feel like the preacher is preaching to a spot in the back wall or to a camera, or and they're like reciting. I don't find that
So that would be more information and less rhetoric.
Is it more information and less rhetoric though? I'd
Well,
have to
that's
tell
what
you,
I
like,
draw. I draw a distinction there.
what's your distinction?
I'd say the best rhetoric is backed up by solid information,
Yeah,
whereas whereas bad rhetoric is just very influential, but not really like very influential and entertaining, but not really much underlying it. Which is why, as I was thinking back to watching it, I wonder how much of it was performative and just pure rhetorically entertaining, and how much of it was actually information.
yeah. So that's my point. With when he was giving his lecture, he's walking one way and the other, and sort of looking at the floor and looking at the sky, and that felt a bit performative. But when he was just sitting in the chair and he gets asked a question, and he like thinks about it and leans forward and looks at like a person talks and then looks at that person talks, that feels far more genuine to me. And it's the same with when someone's doing a sermon. If the guy gets up the front, has his notes, but sort of is looking at you and makes a point, and then goes somewhere else and makes a point, that's different to someone who essentially, if there's 5,000 people or 50 people in front of them, they act in exactly the same way and they look in exactly the same direction. Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Well, I just found that I tuned back in when he started to actually talk about research. So I don't know whether that's just the way I'm geared, but to me, when he sort of came back to that sort of stuff, I was like, oh, hang on, that's the information underlying it, more than just like a influential way of speaking or presenting the information.
Mind you, though, like I don't know that he's really out. Oh, sometimes he is, but I wouldn't say he's generally out there like necessarily trying to influence. I think he's just trying to put his
I
thoughts
do
out there.
that. Yeah.
And look, you can say, hey, like, man, that's just like an opinion, man. And sometimes it is. Sometimes it is backed up by fact, and he can sort of cite some stuff there. But I would say that he does think through his opinions and tries to demonstrate the reasoning for them, if you know what I mean. So it's not, it doesn't tend to be a shallow opinion, if you know what I mean. Even if it is an opinion, it's like, this is why I've landed on that, because I've thought through this. That's why he goes down all those rabbit holes, because he sort of tries to, maybe it's a less organized Socratic way of kind of like trying to step you through to get you there.
Yeah. Well, if you guys had to summarize the gist of what he said in the main lecture part, where would you come down on it? What would you, if you had to like just in a couple of lines, say what he was talking about?
I think his main point is the traditional institutions like marriage are necessary for stability and things to function properly, but that if they are not regularly maintained and updated, that they become stale and that they fail still. So not having them leads to failure, having them but not updating them leads to failure. So the only way for them to function properly is if you have them but then keep updating them, such as date nights and recommitments and that sort of thing for the marriage scenario. That's sort of what I took away from that.
Is that what you got, Lachlan?
I got similar there. I suppose like the different things like pop out to different people, I suppose, depending on what you're thinking about. But
Well, not if it's a well thought out lecture. But that's not what he was trying to do. I'm not suggesting that's what he was trying to do.
Yeah. Look,
what was your take on it?
I'm not so sure, but I suppose a bit like you, I didn't take so much away from the first sort of part of it. I found question two. Yeah, I found question two, or the second rule he kind of tackled more interesting to me, and then the question time more interesting for me again too. The thing like Tim was talking about there, that's the second rule, is about the I suppose, the relationships and stuff like that. I think that interesting thing he was pointing out there too was about the doing that stuff regularly. It was like practice, and that you were not doing a routine to make something boring, but you were working at something to make sure it was as good as it could be, and that when you do get challenged, you've got a solid foundation you can lean on, and that you know the dance steps, you've been through them 100 times before. And I don't know, there's something interesting in that, because it's not something I'd thought about before.
Mm.
I mean, if anything, I mean, I don't treat his lectures like a sermon, but it's probably more just kind of, I don't know, I wouldn't say like conversation starters, but it's just kind of like mental fertilizer or something like that. It's just sort of planting seeds to sort of start thinking and challenging some of the things that you think about yourself,
Yeah.
I don't necessarily like, I know he's giving you 12 steps or whatever to follow, but I haven't followed the steps, so I don't know what they are. So I just find them as more sort of like interesting prompts for my own sort of further sort of thought.
Food for
And
thought. Yeah.
yeah.
Or call it like a trigger to think things through for yourself.
Yeah, well, it's just sometimes it's stuff like, I know I mentioned to you guys when we were leaving the theatre, one of the concepts he was talking about there, which I kind of liked and I hadn't thought about before, was, that the perfect partner for you is somebody who does push back on you, and not in a disrespectful way, but challenges you enough in the right ways that it's sort of supporting and helps you grow, rather than being someone who just gives in to what you want to do every time and is a doormat for, you don't learn anything from that. You're not supported by that. There's no, people, I agree, sort of do better with challenge in life. And you need to have a bit of challenge. And I'm not saying that marriage should be like a wrestling match or something, but enough challenge, to get more, to get better, rather than sort of being lazy, if you know what I mean, like mentally lazy, or it's a little guy. I think he had some interesting stuff there, but
Yeah, there's some interesting stuff. Because see, I don't know whether this is, maybe I'm way off. But if I had to boil down what he was, the gist of it, what I took away was he's essentially saying that people need meaning to operate. They derive those sense of meaning and purpose from the institutions. So basically, you start tearing them down. That's just a bad idea, because you're just going to suck people's purposes out of their existence. That was
that was
roughly what I was saying.
Yeah, I heard that as well.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
That's right. And then it was also like what does give meaning, and that's where I think Ruse were talking about it on the drive back to our places, of just responsibility being meaning, and how that's flawed. Because if you're incapacitated, and we were talking about the similar issues I have with Stoicism, when you have things like dementia and that sort of stuff, that you lose control of that. I feel like that's a whole nother show, though, to talk that through.
Well, look, I know he's talked about some of this stuff in some of his podcasts with like Bishop Barron and others, specifically talking about, the church and religion and what that can give people, in that there is some more purpose there, and, beyond just doing your job. And I don't know, look, I guess he wasn't keen to go down sort of talking those kind of pathways, because that kind of gets into a pretty big conversation there on its own. But
yeah,
100%.
Well, I reckon we wrap it up there, because it's getting late. We started much later than normal, and I think all three of us are ready to go to bed because we're old.
Yeah.
But yeah, for those of you watching or listening, thanks for joining us as we keep working through the Apology by Plato. And I want to give a shout out to my mate Adrian, who's been listening to us. We're going to send him a free copy of the book, and I hope you enjoy that and read along with us. And once again, I'll probably chuck the link for this into the episode description in case anyone else listening wants to order that from Amazon. You can get a Kindle edition as well for about $2 or $3, so pretty easy to find, pretty easy to get your hands on. And yeah, so remember, the Republic wasn't built in a day, and neither are middle-aged men. And we'll see you next time after we've had some sleep. See you later.
Cheers.
Take it easy, guys.